by telling you guys a little story that just to help kind of calm the nerves and get in perspective where I'm at and what's actually going on right now. Johnny had mentioned or referenced about a year ago, about 6 months before we started coming here, or 6 months after we started coming here, as my wife and I were leaving, she asked me, have you talked to Johnny yet? I said, no. Are you nuts? I said, watch. Next Sunday when we go to church, he's going to have a conversation of 10 to 15 minutes with somebody, and within 2 weeks, that person is going to be standing up here, completely red in the face, shaking like a leaf. I don't know what he's telling them. I don't want to speculate, but I would rather take my chances with a cheetah in a phone booth. I think I've got a chance. And I actually felt that it was practical to come up with a whole list of stuff that I would rather do, like drink a glass of wine in a hot tub with a gator in it. I mean, that's the type of stuff that I was coming up with. That's what I felt was proper to do with that situation. But that has become one of my favorite things about church, is when somebody comes up here and shares where they are in life, with God, with their experiences, like Sasha shared this morning and what Blake and Shelley shared. I was a little bit disappointed you set the bar pretty high. Could have kept it a little bit lower. I'd appreciated that. My story, I guess the first thing, I've got this verse. You are the father of the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer at the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. That verse holds dear to me because that's one of the biggest things I've dealt with in my life, was just the lies that I've believed a lot of the lies. And a lot of the reason why I have done that is from years past. I dealt with severe suicide, severe depression. That's the thing that I've struggled with the most in life. Lies have proven to be my biggest challenges in life. Early on, it got me to the point of suicide, like I said, and I've struggled with it throughout the majority of my life. I've tried many ways to combat it, and most leading deeper into darkness. When I was about, I want to say, around 13 or so, I realized that other people were not having this problem. The thoughts that I had, the depression that I had, I understood that that wasn't normal. That was the first that it came to me, that it was what I was going through wasn't quite normal. But I couldn't figure out why, and it started to drive me crazy because I couldn't figure out why this was happening to me. I had maybe a blessing, maybe a curse. I had a memory of my first memory when I was 4 years old. It was very vivid. It was very, I had a lot of the same thought patterns when I was 4 years old. The good thing is I knew I already had it back then. The bad thing was it was at a period in time where I don't remember. So the digging kind of started. I didn't have a bad childhood at all. I don't want to complain about it. But in my family, love was not of the priority. I heard one time from my mom that she loved me at 23 years old, and I still haven't heard it from my father. I know he does, but, hearing it's a different thing. I had a weird start to life, you might say. I was born 2.5 months early. I had less than a 5% chance of making it to my first birthday. I had severe asthma that kept me on a breathing machine for a while. Since I wasn't fully developed, I was told by my aunt that I had 5 different complications, and any of them could have claimed my life on any given day. For reasons that I don't understand, I'm here today. Mom and Dad were very young when they had me, and they definitely weren't ready for a child. They were married Amish, and back then it was a lot worse than it is now. you would get severely condemned for something like that. We had to go live in a separate part of the house for a while, and this is all from, I had to really dig for a lot of this information. But I had to go live, my mom and I had to go live in a different part of the house for a while. People were only allowed limited access to me as far as playing and stuff, or holding me and stuff like that. For a while, we lived in what we call the washroom, and I'm not sure if we ever made it to the woodshed, but I mean, these were kind of like the living conditions, and people, I basically got treated like I was a devil's little sidekick at a very young age. I'm sure my mom was scared out of her mind, being alone, shut off from the world, rejected by her family, fighting daily to keep her son alive. My father could not be there because they weren't married yet, and she constantly got harassed for her actions. In a situation like that, the child feels it, every bit of it. I will vouch for that. I have a feeling that a lot of the depression and a lot of the rejection and stuff like that comes from that point in time in my life, and I didn't even know what was going on. My parents finally got married when I was 3 years old, and that's a great thing, but it was a little too late for me. A child almost fully perceives their perception of love by the time they are 2 years old. At that point, I got love from one person and was a huge burden on everybody else. My father couldn't be around because obviously they weren't married yet. And it just shaped me in a bad way. Growing up later, this put up a lot of walls, and still trying to tear these walls down as an adult, and not understanding 100% of what actually, really happened. Growing up, my father would go weeks at a time without talking to me. One time it went almost three months, and I would blame myself. If you hadn't been born, none of this hurt would be happening. Maybe I am the problem. Why couldn't I just die as a baby like I was supposed to? Could everyone have lived in peace? If I'm this much trouble, why am I here? It's a funny place to be when you know that God worked a miracle for you to be here, and then life's situation is the way that it is. What I would do a lot is I would take a situation, or even as a young kid, I remember doing this. I would take a situation where maybe a life situation that had played out, and then I would remove myself and replay the picture. And it just always seemed, well, if I hadn't been born, my dad wouldn't be going through this, my mother wouldn't be going through this. They wouldn't have had nearly the start. A lot of family could have been saved if I just hadn't been here. A lot of hurt would have not happened hadn't it been for me. And when the picture of God has been painted wrongly for you as a child, it's much easier to believe these lies. We need to make sure that we understand the Father's heart and give our children a great relationship with God. God is love, God is peace, God is always there wanting to talk with you. When we feel the distance from God, we most likely the distance that we created with our own sin and unforgiveness. Maybe we feel like we have no right to ask for forgiveness. I truly believe that this is the one thing that hurts God the most, is not asking for forgiveness or feeling like God is so far away and when he's always there. By the time I had reached my early teens reached my late teens and early 20s, these thoughts and beliefs had manifested themselves into drugs, pornography, drinking on a suicidal level, and a weird fascination with death. I did such unbelievably dumb stuff during this time. anything that had something to do with chasing death. Basically, if God wasn't going to take my life, I was going to. But I needed to make it look like an accident because maybe some of it was pride. And I wanted to save my family from the hurt. The thought of having it look like an accident just sat much better with me. I lost a friend in an accident during this time, a roommate for 2 years. We rode bulls together, worked together, and we lived together. We practically did everything together. We became brothers for the most part for years. But as some friendships do, it phased out, and I went to live with my brother. Shortly after this, that good friend Derek got killed in a car accident. In the days following his death, people would call to see how I was doing. And I was embarrassed because I didn't feel anything. The years of putting walls up and letting depression get to me had manifested itself, and it was now showing to everyone. This was the lowest part of my life. If I hadn't moved in with my brother, I really don't think I'd be here today. I could talk to him about all these things, the pent-up anger, the suicidal thoughts, everything. We would talk for hours every night about life, love, and tried to make sense of God. When we have a wrong picture of God growing up, there's a lot to talk about when we try to make sense of God when you don't fully understand it. My brother and I decided to start going to church. And for the first 6 months that we went to church, I had to take drugs to get into church. I would take about 2 or 3 Adderall before I went into church. I could not go into church unless I was drugged up. I tried twice during that time to go into church without any drugs, and I never made it past the parking lot. And I think of what a lot of it was I believed that I had to be somebody else. Drugs would give you kind of an out-of-body experience. It made me feel like I had to be somebody else in order to be accepted in the church, and that is a complete lie. That was just another lie that I believed that cost me maybe the best years of my life. The lies that we choose to believe become our identity. My identity was rejected, hurt, heartless, selfish pride. And at this point, I had spoken so much death over my life that I felt dead. You can only be a man or suck it up for so long with the drugs, the smoking, drinking, porn, before the weight of carrying all these burdens will crumble you to your knees. And on your knees is where the healing can finally begin. At 23, I gave my life to the Lord. It changed my life. To say it changed my life would be an absolute understatement. I got a promotion almost instantly when I'd been fired from every other job before. My boss would on occasion get out this huge stack of attitude write-ups that I had gotten, and we'd laugh about it and just basically we'd joke about how much of a change that had happened. I think I had the record at 11 attitude write-ups. When you're hurt to that point, I guess you just, it hurt people, basically. Where was that? Life at that point looked like it had a purpose for the first time in my life. You know, maybe I do matter. Was my whole life a lie up to this point? For the first time, I felt whole or like a completed person. In Acts 4:12, salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. I would love to stand up here and say I live happily ever after. However, anyone that has been a Christian for more than 5 weeks knows that this is an up and down battle. As long as you're still here on the earth, the devil will be in action. And I've struggled to stay away from suicide still to this day on occasion. The devil will get to me now and then and tell me that I'm not good enough. Still, things will bother me if I don't fully understand them. So, for instance, Most men could tell you exactly how a car runs. I can give you the general idea of how a car runs, but how the alternator throws spark to the engine, I don't know. And that stuff bothers me because I don't understand how everything works. And that drives me really crazy. Basically, I didn't understand God. The picture had been painted wrong my whole life. And so I didn't understand God, and I was trying to figure out how everything works. I didn't understand God's heart. What makes sense to us as humans is not always correct to the Bible. My first or absolute encounter with God, a couple years ago, we were working on upgrading and remodeling our shop. And I had prayed for an open heart and an open mind just to, God, whatever you've got to teach me throughout this build, I am all yours. And it became all about just waiting for God or seeing what God had for me. As we got started on this project, we got everything stripped down. We were ready to put metal on the barn. And at that point, I realized that I had made a terrible mistake, and I had ordered all my metal 2 inches too long. So I was going to have to cut every piece of metal down just by hand. And it was kind of a punch in the gut, all that metal that I had to now cut down. And we had this cat, and it's just the most beautiful cat you've ever seen. But this thing, I'm not kidding you, is shockingly short on brains. And every time I would lay the metal down on the ground, and I would run my tape measure out to the end of the metal, this cat would just bat my tape measure all over the shop. And I could not understand what God was trying to teach me. I felt like he was trying to teach me patience. And I was a little bit disappointed in that because, quite honestly, I am one of the most patient people I know. And it really disappointed me. Like, I don't think I need more patience. It sounds bad when you say it that way. My first instinct was to remove the cat from, Earth. But maybe this had to happen. Maybe this had to happen so God could show me. So I just dealt with it every time. It was quite the event. Towards the end of this project, I was very disappointed because I felt like God was, trying to tell me to be patient. And I didn't understand, why did this cat get it? I was trying to build and upgrade her life. Thank you. I didn't think about that. Yeah, enjoy the process. I was going through, it's a funny story about that. I was going through probably one of the worst times in my life with my wife. We were struggling. We were really struggling. And I was out in the shop. I was mad at my wife. And I think we were saying something on small group or something like that. You've seen a text come in from Jerry. Enjoy the process. I about threw my phone. I could not believe he would say that. Like, do you not realize? Do you not understand what I'm going through? And it's true. Absolutely enjoy the process. That has become one of the biggest blessings of my life, is just to understand when you're going through something, to still enjoy the process. It's an opportunity. You're on the right side of the dirt. Back to the story. A couple of weeks later, we were at church, and Jordan was given his first message, and he brought up in this message about barn cats and love, or that was kind of the general consensus of it. And all of a sudden, this clicked for me, and I started laughing. I actually went to the bathroom to laugh because I couldn't believe myself, and I didn't want people to think I'm crazy. God was trying to show me love. Every time, God's always been there. He was always reaching out to me as God does. He was giving me his vantage point of my life. He was always reaching out to me. And I was the short on brains cat that was just batting this thing. Every time God was trying to love on me, I would just bat it out of the way. And I think when people will go back into their life and look for it, they'll find it. God is always there, and it was a tool that I needed to have to just upgrade and build my life around. Where was I? I got lost. Wow. Unconditional love. Unconditional love is an amazing thing. And this is what God was trying to show me. God was trying to build this amazing thing around me, and I rejected it on and on. Why? Maybe because it doesn't look like we think it should. At this point, I realized that I had no understanding of love, or at least godly love. My wife is the most deserving person in the world, but did I even really love her? Given my background, I question this all the time. Do I actually love her? Do I actually know how to love? I like to think that I do, but there's just such a vast difference between human love and a godly love. That's what I've come to the conclusion to. However, given the walls and the lies I believe and the selfishness, I still couldn't love. I would take that back and say, it wasn't a godly love. I was so busy looking inward at myself, I was unable to love in a godly way and even put down enough of myself to extend love to another. I was starting to realize that I would need to die to self, and it would take much longer than I'd like to admit. I spent many nights in my shop praying, making commitments to God. I'd stop drinking if you would just talk to me. All I wanted to hear was God's voice. I wanted to hear God's voice, and I really wanted to have a relationship with him, but it seemed like whatever I did, I could not get there. And I went about it the wrong way, looking back at it now. I was trying to, I can't think of the word right now, but I was trying to, basically, I'll do this if you talk to me. And that doesn't get you anywhere at all. Negotiated. I tried to negotiate with God. I got angry with God. All I wanted was to hear his voice. One day in early April, it happened. We had a rough winter and we didn't have much work. Money was getting tight. It was starting to pick up a little bit, and within the first couple of days on the job, I had 2 machines break down. The pickup had problems, the semi broke down as well. All this was totaling up to be thousands and thousands of dollars that we didn't have. Everything became black fast. Now I had no way of making money either. I was stuck there 3 hours north in Michigan, and to be honest, I couldn't see the way out of this one. The devil started whispering, "See, you're not good enough. You can't provide for your family. Your family is going to reject you if you can't provide." After sobbing for an hour and indulging what I thought was the proper amount of self-pity, I broke down and prayed, once again begging God to get me out of here. One thing I used to do as a child was, and it had become habit at this point, was I would pray at least weekly for God to take me out of this life. I did not want to be here. I couldn't deal with the depression. I couldn't deal with the thoughts. And sometimes it would become a daily thing. If it would get bad enough, I would beg God every day to get me out of here. So this was just another one of those. God showed up in the weirdest way. He had very clearly asked me to go behind this one shed and to die to myself. He asked me to surrender my selfish agenda and trust him with everything. That day I truly began to walk with God and trust in him with my life. I had died to self, and he gave me new life. God showed me that my ways, the lies I believed, would unintentionally lead to death. I am alive today only by the grace of God. My old life, doing everything my way, ended in death behind that row of sheds. I got a new start to life with a clean slate, owing my new life to God. I came home smiling, feeling loved. My world was in shambles around me, but this was all God's problem now. I turned everything over to God. Here, you deal with it. You figure it out. Just let me know what I'm supposed to do, and I'll do so. I'm only here because of you. It has become clear to me that the biggest struggle ended up being my greatest blessing. I believe the devil knows this full well, and you can apply this to your life however you want. There's always that one thing in everybody's life where they feel like whatever, that this one thing that always just plagues them, once you get a hold of it and you give it to God, how he will use that as a blessing. It's truly amazing. And I believe the reason why it gets attacked so hard is because the devil knows too what your greatest blessing is. And he's going to attack it as much as he possibly can, because if God were ever to get a hold of this, he would use it to such an extraordinary extent. In closing, I want to say that there's no way for my testimony would have gotten to this point if it wasn't for the people in this room. For my wife, she's been there for me every step of the way. She says things in the most loving way, and you want to just brush it off, but you can't. She's got a way with words. It just kind of lodges in your heart a little bit. And so until you deal with it, she's a wonderful person. And everybody in this room has poured into me at one point in time or another. And I think this is what discipleship looks like on a mass scale. It's a beautiful thing. I have absolutely learned a lot. And I owe my life 100% to God now. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for being patient with me. God bless.